Hello there, and welcome to episode 73 of Little Big Knits. My name is Selma. I'm coming to you from Ottawa, Canada. My name is Selma Knits on Instagram and Ravelry. I thought I would come in for a little mid-December check-in because I got a finished object I want to share. And yeah, here I am. So welcome to this episode. We are mid-December and we have yet to see some snow around here. It has been very gray, very wet, but generally we haven't had snow yet. I do see some snow in our forecast, and it's always nice to have some snow for Christmas. So let's see if we will get that. So since the last time I spoke, I podcasted on Saturday morning on the 26th, I guess. On the 27th, we went to visit my mother at her nursing home and had a lovely lunch with her. And on Monday, I developed COVID symptoms. So people had asked, did you get it in Mexico? And I was like, Mexico was 11 days before since I had come back. And I know that my mother had COVID a second time while I was in Mexico. And I know that they had COVID at the home. So my guess is that I got it there. The symptoms started very quickly on Monday, and I'm still testing positive close to 2 weeks later. And not feeling 100%. I'm not feeling terrible, but hopefully I won't cough, and hopefully my voice is not too bad. So just wanted to share that with you. Today in my cup, this lovely cup from Knit Swag with my name on it and a lovely sweater design or colorwork design on it. I have hot water and lemon juice because my taste buds and smell buds, my sense of smell and my sense of taste are completely gone. The only thing I can taste is sour, sweet, salty, bitter. I can taste sort of the element or the elementary tastes, but nothing subtle, unfortunately. Completely stone, whatever you would call it, not stone deaf, but it's been a little bit annoying, I have to say. So I'm not bothering drinking tea because I can't taste the tea, but I can taste the lemon in the water. So I drink that with a little bit of sweetener in it to give it a bit of that kind of flavor. So needless to say, we are in the middle of Advent, and I had told you that I got a Puka tea Advent. Well, when I realized that the tea just tasted like water, I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna hold off and enjoy those teas once my taste buds come back. So I'm not even bothering on a daily, picking up the tea anymore. And I also have my Clarins Advent, which I'm really enjoying actually. And haven't tried any of the products. I'm just letting them, I'm collecting them, and then I'm looking forward to that. Although I am running out of face cream, so if the face cream shows up soon, I will be using it probably. So yeah. So let's get into what we've got. I have a new sweater in my life, a new Red Ranunculus, which is what I've wanted, and I have to say it turned out exactly as I wanted. I'll put a little bit of footage in there for you to see it on. Today I'm wearing it with a camisole underneath, and you can see that it is very transparent. I did have it on as well with this lovely blouse that I have. So you really just get the collar coming out and the bottom of the blouse peeking out from underneath. And I really like it with this as well. But today I thought I would just wear it with the camisole underneath. So I wanted to show you a little bit. So this is the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose. And if you've been around for a while, you know that I've made a few of these, and you know that I've wanted a red one for Christmas for some time. Last year, I was remembering that last year I made myself or I tried to make myself a red vest for Christmas, and it was an epic fail. It just looked so horrendous on me that it went into the frogging pile. I haven't had that kind of an epic fail in some time, I would say, and it just really was just not flattering. I don't know if it was the cabling on it that was hugging my body, but it just was very unflattering. So I was left with a real desire to have something red for Christmas. So I finally made the red one, and I used this Drops lace, which is discontinued, and I had found in the discount bin at Wool Time, a local yarn shop. Actually, when I bumped into a viewer of the podcast, Sue, we were chatting, and then suddenly I looked down and I saw 2 skeins of this red. And I remember Sue saying, "You don't want to get a 3rd skein?" I said, "Nope, 2 skeins will be sufficient." And I've got this much left of the 2nd skein. There is quite a large amount. It's got 400 meters, 437 yards in each one. And I would say I used maybe half of the 2nd one. So this ranunculus took about 600 yards of this. And I also used the Biche et Bûche Le Petit Silk Mohair in what is called, I believe, dark red. This is the dark red colorway. And I had 4 of these. I had 4 of these, I thought. But maybe I had 5. I don't know, but there's this much left of one. So maybe I used almost 3. I guess I had probably 5 of these. I don't even remember how many I had. So this is very, very light as air. I used 2 lace weight yarns here. I have used fingering and mohair, and I have my very first ranunculus was made with Wollmeise lace garn, which is a bit of a heavy lace weight. I would say it was more like a light fingering. I used that with mohair, and I think that's my favorite one in terms of weight, and I really like this. So I think I like the combination of the lace with the mohair for the ranunculus. So I'll just give you a little close-up so that you can see. It's just quite lovely. Quite lovely. I ended up doing sort of longer sleeves, and I think I like the length, although I wondered if I wanted to shorten it just a tiny bit. But for now, I'm certainly going to leave it like that. If I find that it's too long, then I'll shorten it. But it actually turned out pretty much exactly as I had envisioned. I really wanted something light and airy, and that would be elegant looking with a black camisole underneath, and that's what I got. So there you go. I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't stop knitting on it, and I thought I wanted to come in and share. So the red ranunculus of my Christmas dreams is ready. I also finished another item, which was a Christmas present for a friend, and I won't show it on the podcast until after I've gifted it, because she does occasionally watch. So I'll just leave those aside and show them to you after Christmas in the form of a picture. The other thing that I finished is completely not knitting related. I made a candle. So last year I was watching a Finnish podcast, Omin Tassuin by Jonna Kapela, and I enjoy her podcast very much. She's actually located in the town where I spent my childhood summers when I would go and visit Finland, which is a small town called Lapua. And my grandmother lived in Lapua, and so we went just about every summer, and I spent my time running around Lapua with my cousin. And Jonna Kapela lives there as well. And last year, around Christmas time, she was using old wax from candles that had, she had little bits and pieces from little bits of finished candle or melted wax, and she remelted the wax from those candles to make new candles. And I just loved this idea. At Christmas time, we burn a lot of candles. We burn a lot of candles in the winter. And so I decided at the time, well, I'm gonna start saving wax. So I did that, and last week, when I had a little bit of energy during this COVID thing, I spent some time melting wax. So clearly I had some red Christmas candles. The pink is not from red or pink candles, it's actually red candles that were white inside, and the wax had melted and it was left pink, and then there's a little bit of white up there. And I just made a new candle. Now I made one mistake, and that's that when I poured the red wax, I let it cool overnight completely before doing the next layer, and I had some leakage, as you can see there. And a friend was saying that it's because this, when the wax dries or cools completely, it actually shrinks a tiny bit, so I was left with a gap. So next time I won't let it cool completely like that. I'll know that it has to be done in the same day, and I'll avoid that kind of spillage that happened there. And it didn't happen with the third layer because I'd learned my lesson. So, or I ended up doing those two on the same day, whereas that I left overnight. This is going to be a Christmas present for a friend of mine, in her bag of goodies. So I was really quite excited about doing that. It actually used up a lot of my wax bits, so I didn't have a whole lot left. So I'll just continue saving them, and yeah, I'm kind of excited about this. And I just went to Michael's, which is a big sort of craft store here in North America, and I got a bunch of different lengths of wicks. So I've got wicks, and this was a rather large jar, but I thought, you know, you can use any small container or even reuse containers where you've had a candle. I think I'll save those in the future, put them into boiling water to get rid of any excess wax from there, and then pour candles into them again. So yeah, I just really loved that idea and was really excited to do that. So that's really my other finished object for today. In terms of works in progress, outgrowing this bag. This absolute mess. This is a bag that I made with some wonderful wool tartan fabric that I bought at a flea market at one point. I have this great bag, which my crochet blanket was fitting into until very recently. I need to find a larger bag for it. But this is part of my Advent knitting. I've decided that I would put 1 square a day in this blanket. So I've been working on that, and it's coming along very nicely. I'm really excited about this. I've got my next square for today ready to go. I usually put on a square and then choose my next one. I had at one point done a lot of swaps with people, probably 10 years ago, 10 years ago. And so I have a lot of minis left over from those swaps that I don't even know what they are anymore. So I really can't say a lot of what I have put on in this last row. This I can say is some Patton's Croix, because I just finished something in that. And this was the Woolerton Estate I made a Westboro hat out of a couple of months ago for Fabrications, a local sewing and wool shop. But the rest of them, I really couldn't tell you what they are. Oh, I think this is the hedgerow yarn that I made a pair of socks. But the rest, I really couldn't say what they are. So I am continuing on this and very, very excited about this. So that is work in progress number 1. I have 2 others to share with you. I'm very excited about both of these, so I'm working hard every evening hoping that I could finish these soon. One is this wonderful Mega Diamonds cardigan by Cami Jo Knits. I am on the first sleeve. Actually, I have just a teeny weeny bit left, so I'll finish that today. And I'm just really enjoying this a lot. Really, really enjoying it. It has a little bit less ease than I thought it would, but I'm quite sure that I'll be blocking it out to give it, right now I would say it has 0 ease, but I will be wetting this and blocking it after and probably getting an inch or 2 out of it. So it'll be have a little bit more ease, but it fits very nicely. And I'm just so in love with this. What I'm amazed at, and sorry about the clinking needles, I'm amazed at how little yarn this has used. I am still on the second skein, so I don't think it'll be enough completely for the 3rd sleeve. And I certainly won't need all of this for the 2nd sleeve. So I really only have 2 arms. So I'll probably get a hat out of this with perhaps some other yarn afterwards. I haven't quite decided yet, but yeah, there's plenty. I made this, it doesn't look long. I wonder if I could try it on over my ranunculus. So, there we go. Yeah, it's almost done. And as you can see, it goes just about there. So I think that once I've blocked it a little bit, it'll have a little bit more ease. And I made it, you know, sort of like about 14 inches long. And yeah, I'm really excited. Oh my gosh, it's going to be so pretty. So hopefully next time I podcast, you'll see me wearing this. It's being made on 8mm needles, so it's going very fast. And I really enjoy working with this yarn, the floofiness of it. And yeah, it's been a great pattern. It has now been released. Last time I podcasted, the pattern had not been released yet, but Camilla has released it since then. Did I just say but? I think I did say but. So yeah, so this is work in progress number 2, I suppose. I have been watching the last season, or the most recent season of The Crown, season number 5, I believe, and knitting this while I'm watching that. I just finished it last night. I have to say, I think it's been really an interesting season. There've been some topics that I knew nothing about. I'm not a huge royal watcher, generally speaking. But yeah, it was a well done season. Overall, I didn't fully agree with the actor that they chose to play Charles, because I felt like he was too debonair somehow. He's good, but it didn't look quite the part. But otherwise, I thought it was really well done, and I've enjoyed it. And so I've been knitting on that. But I finished the season last night, so I've got to find something else to watch as of tonight. The other thing that I am making, and actually I forgot to share that this was in a bag that Kristen of Volenvine had sent me a couple of years ago. I really enjoyed it. It's a very matchy kind of situation. In this one, I have this lovely bag from Patricia of Paradise Island. Isn't that beautiful? And there are 2 skeins in here. So this is her sock bag, but it's very roomy. And in here I have the Pressed Flowers hat, which I am moving along with. I realized that I made a mistake, but I have made the decision that I will not be going back to fix it. I'm just going to let it be. And I'm just going to show it to you, but it's right there. There's a second line of that white that shouldn't be there. I don't know what I did, but there must have been something exciting happening on the news or in the Crown. This is the Pressed Flowers hat by Amy Christophers, also known as Savory Knitting. She started out with a shawl pattern and then recently came out with a hat pattern, and even more recently came out with a cardigan pattern, and the cardigan is absolutely beautiful. And this is my first time doing mosaic knitting. I'm so glad to be doing this, and I thought, what a better project than a hat. Perfect place to start. I get to go in the round, so it's easy peasy, and then I'll get to see what it's like to decrease in pattern. And yeah, it's just been a really delightful experience actually working on this. Very easy. I'm getting into the rhythm of it and really enjoying it. So the yarns are, the purple yarn is the Smooth Sock in Royal Flush by Alley Cat Yarns. Melissa is local to me. And the second yarn, hopefully you can see that, is a speckled yarn, and that is by Cami Jo Knits as well. So I've got two projects featuring Cami Jo Knits yarn, this one as well as the Mega Diamonds, which has the Mega Mohair. And this is just a glorious skein of her One Night in Bangkok. Look at the speckling on that. So that is being captured in this hat, and then hopefully I'll have enough to make a pair of socks afterwards. This is being knit on 3.75 millimeter needles. And yeah, I just finally, after finishing this, and I really wanted to finish the body on the Mega Diamonds cardigan and get the sleeve going, then I started paying more attention to this. And so my evening of knitting is split, especially my life has been very quiet and boring. It's split between putting on a square, knitting on the Mega Diamonds for 45 minutes or an hour, and then finishing the evening knitting on this. So that is essentially what I have been working on. I am expecting to cast on some socks. I have to wind the yarn soon, but I think last time I was trying to decide which Christmas socks to cast on, and I've decided to start with the Wool Baron, which is this lovely skein. This is the, what was this called now? Blitzen, the Blitzen colorway. And I've decided to start with this, and I'm gonna use a very neutral, there is some of this taupe in there, a very neutral leftover that I have of, oh dear, I've lost the little band. This is the Wool Barn. I think it's her cashmere sock, and I have no recollection what the colorway is, but that is going to get wound up perhaps today and started, and it's being held in this lovely bag that my friend Sue, Crafty Knitter 7, made. Gosh, when did she give this to me? Maybe 3 years ago. And yeah, Sue has a podcast with Liz called The Distant Stitches. They haven't podcasted a lot recently, but yeah. And she also used to have an Etsy shop, doesn't have it right now, but is a bag maker extraordinaire as well. And I really love this one a lot. So that is a next cast on. Another next cast on is with the Unspun Heroes Cal that we have going on right now. It's a very informal Cal. You can use the hashtag on Instagram. Nothing's happening on Ravelry. There are a few podcasters who are joining in on this, and we're all just using unspun yarn. and I have this Plotulopi. So this is going to be becoming a pair of mitts. I haven't completely decided on the pattern, but my intention is to hold it double, and yeah, make a pair of mittens for myself for winter. So that is hopefully going to get started as well very, very soon, but I don't have a project bag for it yet. So it'll happen soon. So that's really what's on the knitting horizon in the short term. I do hope to start the Ver by Gudrun Johnson. I showed you the yarn when I showed you all my plans. And I'm also hoping to start the Puffed Polo by Mayu. Somebody commented, her name is Mayu K-P, and in Finnish they would say Kope. And she thought it was funny because I said Mayu KP, but I thought, well, they're just letters. I'm sure her last name's actually full words. But I had shown you last time the Puffed Polo. I have the pattern here actually. So I am hoping to start that in some linen quill that Mega of Skeins of Dreams gave me in the rose granite colorway. I'm going to make the puffed polo, and then I showed you last time some Hillesvåg Sölja yarn and some minis by Alley Cat Yarns, and those are going to become the Ver. So hoping to start both of those in the future as well, near future. I had a couple of questions that I thought I would just answer on the podcast. Today is probably going to be a short and sweet, well, it was the Red Ranunculus check-in. I had a question about how I choose patterns by someone. She made the comment, and thank you very much, that I had a tendency to choose very eclectic designers. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting question. Now, I've been on Ravelry since, I think, 2009. And since 2009, I have been quite regularly looking at patterns on a daily basis. I would go in every morning, sort of look through what had come in the last day and put them in my favorites with tags, you know, like DK, cardigan, for example, or for pullover, I just use the word top, top, summer, linen, fingering, for example. And I would put things in my favorites. I stopped using the Q because it wasn't as useful somehow, but I used my favorites. And over time, Ravelry developed a feature where they have your highlights, and the highlights are basically things that come from the most recently published patterns that are usually designers that you've already either favorited or queued or made patterns from. So I actually tend to go to my highlights more than anything. And I've really favorited everything that I've ever liked. I don't go into the incoming patterns, the new patterns anymore, unless I see something on the main page that calls my attention. So I tend to shop, so to speak, from my favorites. And as things come in that I like, I put them into my favorites using tags. So if I want to make something out of, you know, if I want to make a top in fingering weight yarn and I'm looking for ideas, I will go through my favorites and I'll use my tag of top and fingering and go through everything to see if there's anything that I want to make from there. And so I think over time, just from doing that exercise, I've really got a variety of designers. I mean, I really just like to make what I want to make. Ideally, there are some patterns already made or some versions already made of the pattern in Ravelry. I don't tend to like to be the first one to make something unless I really, really trust the designer, just because I want to see, like, how does this fit on different types of bodies? I'm sort of a slightly plump, shorter person. I want to see, like, how do these sweaters work on bustier women. So I tend to like to be able to see patterns. So I rarely will make a pattern when it first comes out, mostly because I want to see, so how does this end up working out? How does it, you know, what are the comments? How does it look on different types of bodies? So I think that over time, and I'm on Instagram, I follow quite a few designers. I look and see what other people have made. I tend to look like that. So I'm not interested in making necessarily patterns only from the biggest designers. Doesn't mean that I haven't. I've made things by Stephen West. I've made things by Jochi Locatelli, Isabel Kramer, some other bigger designers. So I think it's just, I've built up a repertoire on Ravelry by being kind of obsessive in the beginning and looking at, I still do, I look at my highlights every day. Sometimes I'll miss a couple of days if when I was in Mexico I didn't look, or when I was really sick at the beginning of COVID, I didn't really look at patterns, but then I would just catch up. So, and the other question that I got recently was about needles. And I just don't really think that I'm your needle person. I don't think I'm your gadget person. I knit with whatever. I'm not terribly discerning. I do really enjoy Chaogus, but I also like Hayahayas. I've also used Arrow needles, which are a sort of a cheaper German needle. I've used a lot of those. I've used Addies. I've used Knit Picks. I have a selection of needles. I would say that Chaogus are probably my favorites if I had to choose, and especially for socks, I just about always knit out of my red Chaogus 2.25 millimeter needles. But I think I don't really have any issues with my hands. Thankfully, I'm very grateful for that. Occasionally I have had some pain, but mostly I don't. As you can see, I've got something with 3.75 millimeter needles and something with 8 millimeter needles. Somebody recently, I don't even remember where, was talking about having different projects with different size needles and different types of needles. And I think that that's probably a good practice. Some people have a harder time with larger needles. Some people have a harder time with smaller needles. And I think variety is probably a good thing. But I think I really do like to knit with all kinds of different needles. So I don't think I have a set idea on knitting needles. I just knit with whatever I have. Really, I have gotten rid of a couple of needles that were really in kind of like the cables were in really rough shape, and I thought, why am I trying to knit with these? It's really not very pleasant. I do prefer magic loop knitting as opposed to small circumference. I've tried, but I realize that I hold a lot of the needle on with my entire hand, and when you're knitting with very small circumference, you have to knit more with your, you know, the fingers in the front, and I just don't find it pleasant. So I will knit with magic loop in every way, every project I can, really. So yeah, there you go. A couple of other little things before I leave you today. I mentioned that I just finished The Crown. I also watched a program that was a show that was a little older. It's a mini series called Fleabag. I watched that about a month ago, and I really enjoyed it a lot. It's quite crass in some ways. The main character she's just one of these people who shares a little bit too much. She's socially awkward, sexually and emotionally frustrated, but it was very funny and very endearing. I really enjoyed it a lot. We also just finished the most recent season of the Great Canadian Baking Show. Alejandro and I watched that while we were sick, and it was just perfect for that. It was on Gems, CBC Gems, and I just really enjoy the Great Canadian Baking Show. I love it. It's just a lovely, positive, inspiring show. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention, there's a podcast, an audio podcast called The History of English. And a few years ago, a podcaster had mentioned that podcast. There was an episode, it was actually episode 110. They're already at close to 200 or 170 about episodes at this point. So it was about 4 years ago, I think. They had an episode called Dyed in the Wool. And it was fascinating. And I ended up re-listening to that this fall. Because I remembered listening to it. I was on the train going to see my father when he was not well, and I remember thinking, this is so fascinating. I just wanted to write everything down, but I didn't. And so I listened to it actually probably a couple of months ago and kept forgetting to mention it to you. It's just a very, very interesting program about the history of wool and dyeing of wool, and I think it takes place around the 1700s between England and Belgium, and the industry around wool at that time, and some of the history of the words and where they come from, and it's just really fascinating. So I wanted to bring that up and kept forgetting to mention it. So I wrote it down this time and wanted to mention it as a very interesting podcast. It's all about the history of the English language. So there are other episodes about Old English, for example, and Chaucer and the English that Chaucer used, and some that are episodes that are quite erudite. This one is, I would just say, it was a little bit more concrete. It's about wool, so I thought it was very interesting. So yeah, just wanted to make those recommendations. I have not finished Hamnet yet by Maggie O'Farrell, I believe. I'm listening to that very slowly because I'm not out walking quite as much as I would normally have been. Before I leave you today, and I can tell that my voice is starting to go, I just wanted to leave you with a very quick podcast corner with two podcasts that I wanted to mention. One is Fiber Chats with Irina. Irina does a wonderful podcast where she is interviewing makers, designers, people in the knitting community. Not too long ago, she interviewed Amy Palco of The Meaningful Stitch. Recently, she was interviewing a woman whose name has escaped me, Lisa something, I'll put it down here, about yoga and knitting. And that was really interesting. As somebody who does yoga, I thought that was fascinating. So Irina's got some interesting topics on her podcast. She doesn't do a typical knitting podcast like this one per se. I also wanted to mention another podcast that I have just discovered actually, and I thought was really interesting. It's Wool and the Forest with Ducky. Ducky is living in, I think, the San Francisco area or California anyway, but she's originally from Sri Lanka and is a fiber artist and a lovely knitter and just has a wonderful presence on screen. So I just wanted to mention her as well. So 2 podcasts from Podcast Corner this time. So I think that brings us to the end. I hope that you are enjoying this Advent season. If you partake in it, perhaps you've been watching different Vlogmases. I have been watching Kate of Hawthorne Cottage Craft, as well as Sandy by the Lakeside, and Yana of Knitting Finish Stories, and Camilla of Cami Jo Knits. And then I've had to cut it off there because that's a lot of podcast watching. I might not get every single one of every one of each person, but I've been enjoying those. So if you are partaking in Advent, I hope you're enjoying your own calendars if you have one. And if you are about to celebrate Christmas in the next couple of weeks, I hope you'll enjoy. I know there are some other celebrations happening in the month of December we've got Kwanzaa and Hanukkah, I believe. So if you are celebrating those, all the best to you for those as well. I will see you probably between Christmas and New Year's. That was when I had planned to podcast, but then I thought I have to show off my Red Ranunculus. So here I am. We have had a bit of a late start. I've managed to decorate for Christmas, but the tree has not been gotten yet. Hopefully this week we'll manage to get out and get a tree somewhere and get that decorated, and slowly getting into some baking and preparations for Christmas. But I have to say, this year very slowly. As a result, I've also not been doing a whole lot. I haven't been out, so there won't be a whole lot of footage for you at the end of the podcast today. Hopefully next time there'll be a little bit more, and hopefully we'll get some snow so that it'll be lovely, because right now we have a beautiful sunny day, but it's been very gray and grim. At this time of the year, I just want to see some snow. So anyway, before I completely lose my voice, I will let you go, and we'll see you between Christmas and New Year's. Take care until then, friends.
Around midnight, way up high, there's an angel in the sky. The glitter and the shine, she must be divine. What a night, what a sight. Ring the bells loud and clear, have the reindeers reappear. Take my hand, you promised land. Here we go. I have wished upon a star, I've sent my wishes far to get you in every way. I had given up hope when the snow started falling, but then I knew it was you. Around midnight, way up high, there's an angel every night. Take my hand, you promised land. Here we go. Upon a star, I've sent my wishes far to get you in every way. I had given up hope when the snow started falling, but then I knew it was you. Around midnight, way up high, there's an angel every night. Take my hand, you promised land. Here we go.